Welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern, and join me in this episode as we explore the St. Louis Cathedral, history, stories, controversy, and hauntings. Sit back and dwell in the proverbial darkness, my friends. This is the Wicked Webs We Weave. As the cathedral's bells ring this night, we share with you an excerpt of a poem written in 1968, celebrating the presence that is the St. Louis Cathedral in the city of New Orleans. He could not imagine a city where he had heard not a church bell ring, a city without a house of prayer, to him, an intolerable thing. But trees were felled and a church was built, and bells in its steeple were hung. What a wondrous day it must have been when first those bells were rung. By Amy Boudreau, The Bells of St. Louis, 1968. The St. Louis Cathedral is the oldest continually operating cathedral in America. 3 different Catholic churches have stood at the current site of St. Louis, the first being built in 1718, but it wasn't until 1793 that the church was raised to the status of cathedral by the Diocese of New Orleans. The cathedral is located in the French Quarter in front of Jackson Square, and is flanked on both sides by the historic Cathedral and Presbytery buildings. The cathedral was home to 2 of the most respected religious figures in New Orleans during the 18th and 19th centuries, Pierre Antoine and Pierre d'Aguirre. Both served as leading authorities in the city's Catholic community and in New Orleans overall. Pierre Antoine was revered for dedicating his time and efforts towards helping the prisoners and enslaved people of the city, along with Marie Laveau, who he baptized. D'Aguirre was also known for his popularity, often seen socializing with the city's populace and breaking with the traditions of the Catholic Church. The ghosts of both men have been seen in the St. Louis Cathedral and the surrounding vicinity, and are commonly seen haunting the alleyways on either side of the cathedral. The Pierre Antoine Alley was named after the famed priest in 1924, as his spirit was, and still is, seen walking down the alley singing church hymns in early mornings. Pirate Alley is named for legendary pirate John Lafitte, as his favorite bar, the Absinthe House, is right around the corner. It was rumored that the pirates would sell their bootlegged wares along the alley fence at night. The ghost of Jean Lafitte and Pierre d'Aguirre have been both seen walking around the Pirates' Alley. And as a side note, on a personal level, I must attest to these sightings, as I myself have been outside of this Jackson Square Cathedral and seen a priest walking by me, saying good morning, whistling and humming, only to disappear around the corner. History of the St. Louis Cathedral. The first church at the site of the current St. Louis Cathedral was built in 1718. The church was dedicated to King Louis IX of France, also known as Saint Louis, having been the only French king to be made a saint. Interestingly enough, the city of New Orleans was founded at the same year. Adrien de Paragy, a French engineer, chose the site of the French church to be built on. He died before construction was finished and was buried on the church grounds. The church stood for 70 years before the Great Fire of 1788 tore through New Orleans, destroying much of the city's infrastructure, including the church. The fire started in the home of Army Treasurer Don Vicente Jose Noailles, who lived right next to Jackson Square. Most of the buildings in the city were made with timber, making for an easy kindle for the fire. The massive inferno was further spread by heavy winds and was because of Good Friday. The priest did not allow for the church bells to be rung as warning, which led to more damage being done. Peter Antonio was the church priest at the time, and some blamed the destruction of the city on him due to his refusal to ring the church bells. Almost all the major buildings in the area were destroyed, including the Church of St. Louis. The second church was built on the same site in 1794. 1 year earlier, while being rebuilt, it was raised to the status of cathedral by a diocese of New Orleans. The architects added a central spire and clock bell in 1815 to commemorate the victory of the Battle of New Orleans. During these years, people of all social classes prayed and were baptized at the cathedral. This is mainly the work of Pierre Antoine, who placed a heavy emphasis on helping the lower classes and slaves in New Orleans. In 1815, the church got a major uplift, with most of the Spanish architecture being demolished and rebuilt. The church got a new central spire and was enlarged and expanded. This is the third and current integration of the church. The St. Louis Cathedral has survived numerous disasters. The building was bombed in 1909. Luckily, no one was present. While the culprits were never found, many blamed Italian immigrants or radical anarchists for the bombings. Just a few years later, a major Category 3 hurricane hit the city, overshadowing the bombing and causing major damage in the cathedral. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the city, again damaging the cathedral and tearing a hole in the roof. Pope Paul VI visited the cathedral in 1964 and declared the St. Louis Cathedral a minor basilica. Still, the people of New Orleans call it a cathedral for the sake of consistency. Pope John Paul II visited the cathedral in 1987. The architecture of St. Louis Cathedral seems to stand in perfect symmetry with its surroundings. The cathedral has two spires on either side, with a central spire and clock tower. On both sides of the cathedral sits a Cathedral and the presbytery. Two buildings are almost identical in appearance, creating a symmetry with the church. A statue of Andrew Jackson also sits directly in front of the church in Jackson Square. Between the St. Louis Cathedral and the Cabildo in Pirates Alley, so called for Jean Lafitte, who was known to hang out there. They say that the pirates used to sell their bootlegged wares on the fence of the alleyway. Pierre Antoine Louis sits in the cathedral in the presbytery. It was formerly called Cloisters Alley, until the ghost of Pierre Antoine was spotted in the alley. Pierre Dagobert de Longueuil was originally from Quebec, but moved to New Orleans to become part of the Catholic Church. He became the priest of St. Louis Cathedral in 1745, and was soon appointed as Vicar General of the diocese. He was praised for his kindness and dedication to the poor of New Orleans. He ran the Charity Hospital for 8 years in the 1750s. Pierre Daguerreotypes spent much of his time fraternizing with the average people of New Orleans, being seen at weddings, births, and funerals. He was kind of a foodie who hung out with taverns and bars. He was locked down upon the authorities of the Catholic Church for breaking down many of the traditions, like being too lax with Catholic rituals and wearing non-traditional clothing, like tricorn hats. Both historians and the Catholic Church have greatly overlooked Pierre Daguerreotypes' contributions to the city of New Orleans. Pierre Antoine Antonio de Sedela, better known as Pierre Antoine, was a Spanish friar who served as the lead Catholic priest of the city of New Orleans from his arrival in 1774 to his death in 1829. He was well known for his dedication to the city's underclasses and worked tirelessly to bring religion to the poor, prisoners, and slaves. He baptized the famous Marie Laveau when she was a child. Later, as Marie got older, The two worked to bring freedom to slaves and people of color in the city. He was both hated and loved by the people of New Orleans. Though most Catholics were found in Pierre Antoine, both the garden behind the cathedral and the northeast alley are named after him. Pierre Antoine was appointed as the church's rector in 1793, when the church was raised to a cathedral, and served his post until death. The entire city mourned the death of Pierre Antoine, and most businesses closed in the early day of his death to pay their respects. Pierre Antoine and the commonly spotted ghost in St. Louis Cathedral. He's easily recognizable. There's a large portrait of him in the church. He's usually seen on the balcony of the altar, especially near the holidays. Members of the Catholic Church in New Orleans say that this apparition appears on the altar during the midnight mass, holding a candle. Pierre Antoine's spirit is most commonly seen in the alleyway that bears his name. He appears early in the morning, humming church songs under his breath. He's been seen in the alley for almost 100 years, first being sighted in 1924. Witnesses say they've seen him in other parts of the city as well, like near the St. Louis Cemetery or around the French Quarter at night. Père Daguerre is a common sight in the cathedral as well. They say he can be heard singing the hymn Kylie on rainy mornings. He tends to walk out in the St. Louis Cathedral and stroll down Pirates Alley, humming the entire way. When Spain took over the city in 1768, a group of French Creoles ousted the new Spanish governor. Spain didn't appreciate the revolt and sent their soldiers to crush the revolt. 5 surviving Creole ringleaders were rounded up and shot. The Spanish ordered the bodies not being buried. Dagobert and his men went to retrieve the bodies under the nose of the Spaniards. Dagobert gave them a proper burial in the church grounds. They say that Père Dagobert hangs around to keep watch over the rebels. The ghost of pirate Jean Lafitte has been seen walking through Pirates Alley. There's some doubt that it's actually Lafitte. Locals say that it's another pirate by the name of Reginald Hicks. Hicks fell in love with a beautiful Creole woman just a few months before the War of 1812. He rushed to get married after finding out that his lover was pregnant with his child, as he didn't want his kid to be illegitimate. The only priest that would marry them was a German priest who was in the prison next to the St. Louis Cathedral. The priest came to the fence at Pirates Alley and married Hicks and his lover. Hicks later died in the war, and it's said that his ghost haunts the alleyways where him and his wife had been married. The ghost of Delphine Lalaurie of the Lalaurie Mansion has been spotted walking the aisles of the church. This ghostly apparition, she said, was known to go to Mass and worship at the St. Louis Cathedral. It seems that her spirit still comes to pray at the cathedral to this day. Thank you very much for joining me in part 1 of a 2-part series focusing on St. Louis Cathedral, the history, people within, the controversies, and of course, the hauntings. Part 2 will be uploaded very shortly, so please subscribe and like, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any uploads from the wicked webs we weave. Please also check my previous episodes involving Muriel's Jackson Square. It also focuses on Pirates Alley. And other podcasts that also reflect St. Louis Cathedral, its influence, its center in the city, and hauntings around. I am your host, Ryan Mckern. With prayers and confession, until we meet again, au revoir.